5 Live Formula One.
Formula One is back. We are up and running in 2026, and we've made our way from Albert Park to the beach here in St Kilda to chew the fat after the first race of the season. My name is Harry Benjamin, and I'm joined by Jenny Gow and the former McLaren mechanic Mark Priestley. A race that saw the new regulations seen for the first time in race trim, and it was won by George Russell and Mercedes. We will talk about how they won the race and our thoughts about that. But first of all, Jenny, this new era of racing, did we like it?
I liked it. I enjoyed it, especially the first 13, 14 laps when it was dicey. They were having, there was drama out on track, and that's all for me I want to see. I want to see drama. I want to see battles for the lead. Yes, some could say it was a little bit artificial, but I was okay with that. I enjoyed the first few laps.
Yeah, obviously we're getting to grips, aren't we, with this 50% internal combustion and a near 50% split with battery management, and trying to work out how that is unfolding on track along with the new things like Active Aero, Mark.
Yeah, there's so much that's new. I think that's the point. There were a lot of doomsayers coming into this weekend predicting a bit of a disaster, I think, and we didn't get that. And I think, you're right. We got some great wheel-to-wheel racing, a lot of positional changes, and I think if you're a casual fan, that's exactly what you want to see. The problem's going to be, and it always will be with anything brand new, the die-hard fans, the people that have been watching forever, really what they want is what they loved 20 years ago. They're never going to get that again. So you do have to be open-minded. And I think with the very beginning of a new set of regulations, there was a lot to enjoy today. There's definitely room for improvement and things that we can tweak and fine-tune. But that's the way that anything brand new starts out. And so I'm okay with it.
And I would say that every regulation set change, when it's a big one, it takes a little bit of time to go, oh, okay, I get this, and accept it. We as humans fear change. But actually, once you get it, and that's the new norm, you get it, and it's fine, and you accept it. And I know that the diehards will rail against this, but I think for most people, it was a perfectly fine race.
One thing I will say is that, the early part of the race, particularly where we saw George Russell and Charles Leclerc, the Mercedes versus the Ferrari, there were a lot of positional changes, but it was back and forward. So halfway around the lap, the Ferrari's in front, then later the same lap, the Mercedes has got back in front. That's going to be a feature. And it's the reason people will criticise this is because they will say it's not pure racing, and those positional changes were about different levels of energy in the battery at different stages around the lap. But that's the era that we're in right now. So you can criticise it as much as you want. You can say that that's not pure, that's not what we've all been used to over the last generations of this sport. But actually it's what we've got, and it can be entertaining. I think we got a glimpse into that. I think it could be even more entertaining than we saw today, just because we're figuring it out. One team, Mercedes, did a better job than everyone else around this track. That's not necessarily going to be the case all the way through this season.
I liked it. It felt like a normal F1 race. It was quite exciting at the beginning. We got some good overtakes. We had a 4-car battle at the front at one point, Mercedes versus Ferrari. Then it kind of died down a bit. Ferrari made the traditional strategy error and then lost out on a chance of getting any better than third with Charles Leclerc. And then it got a bit boring for a few laps.
Which is a normal F1 race.
So kind of very F1-y. And yes, it was a different way of going about it. But I wonder, look, I'm not going to sit here and say this is the right way of doing things. But I understand why we're doing it, and it's the trickle-down effect, it's the road relevancy with all the power units and the technology and all of that. But at the end of the day, I want to see overtakes, and I want to see battles up and down the field, whether that's for podiums or wins. And I'll give you this. I was on the bus back from Albert Park, outside Gate 1, all the way back to our hotel.
I walked, but,
I took the bus too.
It's like a 45-minute walk, so 10 minutes on the bus. Anyway, got on there, and I was with about 10 other Aussies who had all just clearly been in the grandstands watching the race, and I was listening to their conversation. And they were all absolutely loving those first 15 laps and how back and forth it was, and they wasn't sure which way it was going to go. And then they were talking about how Lewis Hamilton was closing in on Charles Leclerc at the end of the race, closing in. If there'd been another 15 laps, could he have got Charles Leclerc for a podium, maybe even got Kimi Antonelli, who finished second? And ultimately, listening to that, I was like, well, job done.
So here's my concern, and I'm sure a lot of fans will share this. You're right. There was, wheel-to-wheel racing, lots of positional changes, and people want to see that when you flick your TV on or you listen to our coverage. But I think because it was the first day of this new regulation cycle, we saw those two drivers, particularly I'm thinking George Russell and Charles Leclerc, switching positions multiple times. I think what might happen, and this could be a concern, is as we get further into this and everyone works out how to optimise it, if you're a strategist, if you're sitting on the pit wall of one of those teams, it may well be that the optimum way to get through the early part of a race is not to do that and actually just to sit behind the other, manage your energy in a much more efficient way. That's not entertaining, but it might be the more efficient way around the racetrack. And then maybe, before the first pit stop window, then you make your move. You break cover, you go for your track position. And I think that might be a potential concern, because always in Formula One, the engineers and the teams behind this sport optimise these things down to the nth degree. Right now, it's so unknown, so unpredictable. We got a little bit of chaos and a little bit of unpredictability. It won't be like that forever.
I think, as you say, F1 teams learn really quickly. F1 fans learn really quickly as well. So I think there's a good opportunity for everyone to just have a think, look at the data from today and learn so much more. And I know what you're saying, but there's a clever way to race, isn't there? And engineers get that clever way to race. Strategists get the clever way to race. And I think they'll want to impress. They'll want to race hard. So yes, they'll conserve and pick the right time. But with DRS, we saw the same thing in Vegas. Carlos Sainz was right on it. He knew exactly when to deploy and when not to. So it's about the driver learning, about the teams learning, about us learning how it works.
Well, yes, ironically, I suppose the majority of the drivers that had something bad to say about the regulations weren't up at the sharp end of the field or where they would like to be.
Yeah.
One man who was fairly complimentary of things was George Russell and Mercedes, and that's what we always see with a big regulation change. We normally get one team that absolutely nails it and maybe runs away from it. I don't know if we're going to get that this year, but certainly from the off-gen, Mercedes have nailed it. And I think Toto told you after the race, we are back.
Yeah, and it's nice to hear them saying that and having confidence in one race's performance. So yes, they're back. It's a bit like Brawn in 2009. It's a bit like when Lewis signed with Mercedes and they started winning. You have to take a bet and a gamble on who has the best performance, who has the best car. Fernando Alonso took a punt and went to Aston Martin. Hasn't worked out so far. And yet you look at Mercedes, they've been a whiz when it comes to engine regulations. This is an engine and chassis regulation set. So it was obvious that they were going to challenge. Quite how much they're challenging and how much the advantage is off the chart, really. But I'm excited for them as a team because all of a sudden they are back.
Yeah, they're definitely back as things stand right now. And you go back to 2014 when the first iteration of the hybrid regulations came into the sport. Mercedes, and as you rightly say, they enticed Lewis Hamilton from McLaren because they had this opportunity to design the power unit and the chassis and the car together, integrate the two, design them as one single package. They weren't buying an engine in from someone else. They had the opportunity to get early indications of how that should work. All the data they had it first before anyone else, and they did a very good job. It feels like they've done exactly that same thing again, but they're not the only ones that have that opportunity. Ferrari do the same, Audi do the same. There are other teams that had the opportunity to seize hold of this set of regulations and do the same thing, but it is Mercedes that had the better job so far. So I'd caveat the whole thing by saying because it's all so new, it's so early in this regulation cycle, there's going to be massive development. This season particularly is going to be a development race more so than any other, maybe even the first half of this season more so, as other teams start to bring opportunities and new developments, upgrades to the car, get their head around how to utilise the technology. So, Mercedes have hit the ground running, which was the right thing to do. They've capitalised on it today. Others will get closer, I have no doubt.
I feel like Mercedes was a slight tale of two halves because you had George Russell, who's been really the favourite since testing, or maybe even before we even went testing, for all the reasons that you were saying, Jed, about Mercedes and their history. And then you had Kimi Antonelli, who is 19 years old, back for his second season in Formula One, and he had an up and down rookie year, didn't he, Mark? And he had an up and down Melbourne too, but salvaged it all. Big crash in practice, just about got out for qualifying. Definitely owes the mechanics a beer. I bet as number one mechanic, I'm sure you'd be demanding a beer from Kimi Antonelli after the shift you would have had to put in replacing that Mercedes car on all the bits on it. Got out for qualifying, stuck it on the front row, and then eventually got second and made it a front row lockout. But it was bad starts for both Mercedes, actually, we should say.
Yeah, he's quite a difficult one to judge because he clearly made mistakes. You know, that crash in FP3 was a big one. The start of the race was poor, really quite poor from Antonelli. But actually, if you take that to one side, the rest of it's been brilliant, and he's recovered from those things extraordinarily well. So I think he lost 5 or 6 places at the start, didn't he? And yet, you know, he's finished second behind his teammates. So it shows you the advantage Mercedes have. In qualifying after the crash and the rebuild of the car, he had massive pressure to deliver and put the car on the front row. He did it. And
it shows a certain level of maturity. Like last year, he really struggled through the summer period, and he got his head back in the game. And this race, he could have had the same fate of going back and doubting himself and doubting his ability, but actually he came back from that big smash. The mechanics did a great job in doing that, as you said, but he believed in himself. Even though he lost traction and places at the start, he came back, and I agree, the pace is phenomenal for that Mercedes. It won't be like that all year, but right now it is, and they need to take advantage of that.
And I would say he's come in, you know, he's starting his career in the right place. Mercedes, under the leadership of Toto Wolff, is a really good, supportive environment, I think, to be in. When you're having struggles, you know, he started his Formula One career with a struggle. If you remember that run out he had in free practice at
in Italy,
crashed it when all of the world's eyes were on him just before they were about to announce him as a racing driver. It was Toto and the team that put their arm around him and supported him, and that's a testament to the fact that he's still going and he's still pushing, and he has got the confidence he's got. That's a large partly to do with Mercedes and Toto and that leadership group.
Well, a great start for Mercedes. Let's hear what their drivers had to say after the race.
It does feel sweet. It does feel sweet. It's been a long time coming for us to have a car beneath us that we can feel, that we can fight for great stuff. And it was the race that we expected. Chaotic start, difficult with the overtakes, with the boost, with the energy. Some quite dicey action with Charles, but brought it home.
I fear asking this question already, but championship contender?
I don't know who. Take it race by race. Just enjoy the moment, and there's no reason why we can't continue to fight for victories. But Ferrari were substantially more competitive than all of you guys thought. I think everybody expected a walk in the park from Mercedes, and it was far from that. Of course, we were still the most competitive, and that was great. But as I said, not a walk in the park.
Kimi, congratulations. Second place in the first race of the season. Just tell me how you're feeling after that.
Yeah, it was a bit mixed feelings, to be fair. I had a really poor start. I had an issue at the start, but obviously then the pace was very strong, and the car was feeling unbelievable. So it was good to see. It was good fun, and it was a pretty flat out race. But yeah, definitely there's a lot of work to do, but great result for the team, and really, really grateful.
Is it how you expected it to be when it comes to being out on track, a new generation of cars, the excitement of being at Albert Park? Now you're in your second season.
Yeah, no, it was. I think the race was much better than what people and what we all anticipated. I think with the overtake boost being so powerful, it actually gave a lot of action in the first few laps, and of course it was fun to fight back. It was not fun to lose so many positions, and I think that was a really game changer for the race. But I think it was good fun this weekend, and I think next week in China will be much better on battery, will be much easier, and I think it will be even better.
Well, a great start for both Mercedes drivers, maximum points for the team. But there was a nice little ding-dong with Ferrari early doors. Mercedes' poor starts, as Mark was mentioning, Jen, And Ferrari came good with the lightning fast starts for both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, who I think underperformed in qualifying. They were disappointed with that. But Charles Leclerc took the lead by turn 1 and then had a great ding-dong with George Russell, so much so that it then brought in Lewis Hamilton a couple of laps later. And once Kimi Antonelli recovered from his poor start, we had a 4-way fight for the lead at one point.
And that was the gift that we had in those first few laps, because it was a ding-dong, as you said. And it was viral after Bahrain and the testing of Lewis just coming from 10th all the way to the front. And they played it down and said, that's not going to happen in the race. It absolutely did happen in the race. Okay, he didn't start 10th, but they were rocket ships and they managed to take the lead. And you have to ask the question, if the virtual safety car hadn't have happened when it did, would they have managed to keep the lead? Would they have been up there? They certainly would have challenged a little bit more. But it was great to see them take the fight to Mercedes at some point, and we needed that as a spectator sport.
Well, as we said, we loved the overtaking at the start, Mark, but Isaac Hadjar pulled off the side of the road, suspected engine issues at the time, virtual safety car. It felt like almost everybody who was in a position to pitted. Neither Ferrari did. Did that cost them a better result on Sunday?
It's actually really difficult to say. I do think it was a mistake not to pit. I think at least with one car, that was a real opportunity. Whether they had enough pace to really take it to Mercedes, I just don't know. And I'm not even sure they know. So maybe they kind of got away with it in that sense. But I still think if that was the mistake that we think it is, it's another example of Ferrari just not quite being clean with their and clinical with their decision making from the pit wall. So, you know, Lewis Hamilton came off the back of last year, a really difficult, season, but he was critical of his own team. He went into the winter saying things have to change, people have to change. We've got to get a bit more tightened up with all this stuff. We heard Lewis on the radio actually being really quite demanding and adamant. Do not bring me in at the same time as Charles Leclerc. He questioned, should we have not made a pit stop during that safety car, that virtual safety car? So Lewis is quite strategic in the way that he thinks. He will be really frustrated, I think. He didn't say that after the race. I think it was quite, pragmatic about it. But I think that was a missed opportunity from Ferrari. What I will say about the start, Ferrari do have a great start. A lot of people, putting that down to the smaller turbo, meaning they can spin that up more quickly than other teams. I think it was exacerbated a bit today because both Mercedes had a problem in that they rolled up onto the grid with empty batteries. That will be something they need to look at. I don't know why that has happened, but with an empty battery, once you get up to your 50 kilometres an hour and you've got your initial launch, they were missing that massive boost that comes from the electrical side of the power unit that everyone else had, Ferrari particularly. So it may well be that although Ferrari have an advantage at the start, maybe it wasn't quite as dramatic as we saw today.
And it took me back to Qatar last year when McLaren didn't pit. They didn't stop when everyone else did. And when you've got track position and you're leading the race, it's not as easy, is it, to make that decision?
Yeah.
So you want to stay out. You want to stay ahead of everybody else. And it's very easy for the people behind you to make that decision of, well, they haven't pitted, so obviously we pit and we get track position later on. So I think it's really hard to judge it when you're not on the pit wall in the
when
team
you have
embedded.
two cars in that position, you could have done one of them.
Yeah, I agree.
When you've got that option, which is what Lewis said on the radio, right?
Yeah.
But despite all that, they kept in the hunt for that final podium place, and Hamilton was really actually closing in on Charles Leclerc at the end, within about 0.6 of a second as they crossed the line at the checkered flag. I wonder, a few more laps?
Yeah.
Hamilton back on the podium. He didn't see it once last year.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. He thinks so as well. And what's the biggest thing for me to come out of this whole weekend is a brand new Lewis Hamilton who was upbeat, who was positive almost all weekend. Yeah, he finished behind his teammate, but that's not really the story of the weekend for them, because actually on a number of occasions it was Lewis that was the lead Ferrari in terms of pace. So I think Lewis suits this type of car a lot more than the ground effect era that he struggled so much, both at Mercedes and Ferrari. It may be that the tide is just turning and it's swinging back towards Lewis a little bit.
And as someone who's worked with Lewis, you can understand when he's got his head down and when he's actually got his chin up. And today, I felt like all weekend, he had his chin up.
We used to joke that there was more performance in keeping Lewis happy and keeping his emotional state in the right place than there ever was with anything we could actually do with the car. So, you know, when he was going in a relationship with Nicole Scherzinger, and that was off and on, the moments it was off, his performance dipped off and fell off a cliff. So I can tell you from experience, his emotional state affects his performance, as it does all of us.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to keep me well fed, otherwise past 8 p.m. and I get a bit
Don't
cranky.
we know it, Harry?
And we're getting dangerously close to that. I wonder when last orders are going to be anyway. But we'll move on then. Actually, no, before we move on, let's hear from a rather upbeat Lewis Hamilton.
It was actually a lot of fun. It's a really good race. None of us really knew what to expect. So, but great fun at the start. First laps. Lots. Well, not. I don't. At the battle, I got to watch from my position. Got to do some overtaking as well. So, yeah, super excited for the rest of the season.
Let's move on then and talk about our reigning world champion, Lando Norris, in the only McLaren that finished the race. Actually, Oscar Piastri obviously crashed out on the way to the grid, didn't even make the formation lap. That's the whole thing. But Lando Norris and McLaren, best they could do, Mark?
Probably the best they could do given the circumstances they found themselves in this weekend. Definitely not the best they would have hoped for. Don't forget, they have the class-leading power unit in the back of their car. They've got a Mercedes, the one that won the race by this huge margin, has dominated all weekend. The only difference is the drivers, the team, and the rest of that chassis.
And the time zone, the time scale of everything, because they only got it after Bahrain.
Yeah,
so they haven't had it for 4 years, which it's been developed by Mercedes for 4 years, and McLaren all of a sudden get it just before the race.
So that's the latest iteration, and the one that Mercedes were testing in Bahrain, McLaren only got this weekend. So
the one with go faster stripes.
Yeah. So that will have cost them to some extent, because, you know, all the time you can get on track, you're learning more about it. But I think there's still clearly some deficiency in the McLaren car, in the aerodynamics, in the way that it uses its tyres. That car's not quick enough. It's nowhere near quick enough if it wants to take on a Mercedes. So they've got a lot of work to do. Yes, on the power unit side, in getting to grips with that and understanding how to deploy it. You know, these power units are complex. Learning how to use, it's not just the technology, it's how you use it, how you deploy it through a race scenario. That's a big amount of learning they've got to do. But I think they've still got some work to do on the chassis side. Is it aerodynamically efficient? Is it using its tyres well? Has it got grip in the places it needs it? And I don't think it was even anywhere near a match for Mercedes today.
No, Norris certainly and McLaren with pace to find. He did finish ahead. There was a bit of a battle brewing, wasn't there, with Max Verstappen. I mean, Max Verstappen's Australian Grand Prix weekend, didn't really see much of him from practice, crashed out in the first part of qualifying. As a result, out-qualified by new teammate Isaac Hadjar.
Not by a little bit.
And finished 6th. Max Verstappen. What?
I know. It's hard to believe, isn't it? This is, at the moment, the best person, the best driver in Formula One. It just didn't go his way this weekend, did it? And he didn't put it together. And I wonder where that comes from, where it stems from. Without having spoken to him in depth, it's hard to figure out where that was and what's going on.
He's grumpy. He doesn't like the cars. Doesn't like this era of Formula One.
He needs food.
That's the first. That's the first thing. And you know, the reason he's grumpy is he's not a fan of where we're going with Formula One as a whole, and he's been very vocal about that. But in qualifying, in the first part of qualifying, when he had his accident, I don't think it was a driver error accident. He had the rear axle lock, and that was, at least in part, I think largely to do with the complex systems that run the energy harvesting going into that corner. So he was just a passenger. He hates that. He's a very, very highly competent driver, 4-time world champion, and yet he looked amateur, and I think he hates that. So he did recover it well. 20th up to 6th, good recovery drive. The one thing I'm really intrigued about, and I don't think we know off this weekend, is how good is that car in the hands of Max on a clean weekend, and I can't wait to find that out.
Shout out to Isaac Hadjar, who did a brilliant job in qualifying 3rd and doing kind of what Red Bull have always wanted their second driver to do. When Max Verstappen might not be in the equation, the other one is able to maximise and get something out of it. Ultimately, Hadjar retired, so didn't get the result he wanted. So Norris 5th, Verstappen 6th. I'll just run you through the top 10, the point scorers. Oliver Behrman in the Haas 7th. Arvid Lindblad on debut for Racing Bulls, the British rookie in Formula 1, 8th, ahead of Gabriel Bortoleto, who gets 2 points for Audi in their first race in Formula 1, and Pierre Gasly stole the final point in 10th. In terms of that best of the rest battle then, Jen, who's catching your eye?
Oh, undoubtedly, there's only one person that can, and I'm not British bias, but everyone will say I am, but obviously it was Lindblad. He did such a good job all weekend. He diced with everybody. He was up the front. I thought he showed composure. He's the only rookie this year, and he was very impressive.
Completely agree. I thought he had a solid weekend, building gradually as the weekend went on, which is, from a team's perspective, that's what you need. You need a driver to not make mistakes, build their confidence as well as their experience, and then finally, when it comes to race day, deliver, and that's what he did.
It's a clean sweep for Lindblad. It would be remiss of me. I think he was magnificent. I'm surprised, actually. The only blemish was that he didn't quite get it together in the final part of qualifying, because he got out-qualified by Liam Lawson.
Yeah.
But he was up to 4th at one point in this race. So
and had a great battle with Max Verstappen, right?
Yeah.
This is the guy that he's supposed to be just helping his way through. Move over when Max turns up. He didn't get that memo. Max was in his mirrors for a long time, went wheel to wheel and fought tooth and nail. I loved it.
It was incredible from Arvid Lindblad. So well done to the rookie. Gets 4 points for 8th place. And just before we come to our hero of the race, that's our new driver of the day that we kind of installed after Fernando Alonso's incredible comments at a race last year and some radio gold. If you're wondering how the new team on the block, Cadillac, did, well, they had one car finish in the form of Sergio Perez, so managed to get some decent running with him, 16th. And the Aston Martin situation, which really has been one of the biggest stories of the weekend, with their Honda power unit being, well, not very powerful. They did actually get both cars starting the race, Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso, in and out of the garage, it seemed. And Lance Stroll did actually, although he's technically not classified, he did take the checkered flag, but about 15 laps down.
So obviously I'm in the pit lane, and it was like a procession of in, out. Okay, what are they doing now? Oh, they're retiring the car. Oh no, he's back again. It was like a phoenix from the flame. It didn't do anything for them apart from give them valuable testing data, because they missed so much of the test. Actually, I think it's good that they were out. It's good that they managed to do the amount of laps they had, because they were talking about nerve damage and the wrists and the thumbs and fingers, and actually they went out and did more than the laps that they thought would harm them. So that's got to be a good thing. Yeah,
nerve damage from the vibrations from the batteries in the engine that were making it impossible, really, for Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll to drive a full Grand Prix distance. They did get good lappage in, though, in the end. But Alonso retired, Bottas as well in the Cadillac, along with Hadjar, Piastri and Hülkenberg did not make the start of the race. Right, hero of the race. Who wants to go first? Mark, Jenny, Mark, Jenny. One of you got Mark.
First.
I mean, look, I think you struggle to look beyond George Russell, because he didn't really put too much of a foot wrong, other than turning up on the grid with an empty battery, and I don't know the reason why that happened, but he's got a car that's so dominant, but you still got to get the job done, and he did exactly that.
And that's why he's not my hero of the day, because he had the dominant car, he was on pole, and he did what he needed to do, albeit with a great drama with Charles Leclerc. For me, it's Lindblad. He's rookie. He was so impressive off the start, and he kept it in the top 10. Valuable points for Racing Bulls, and for me, British bias maybe, I don't care, it's him.
I'm going to go for Lindblad as well. Right, talk of hero of the race. I spy out the corner of my eye a BBC F1 correspondent.
Shall I give him my mic?
And it's Angela. Yeah, Elvis, you're done for the day.
You go.
Get the orders in. Yeah. Thank you very much. Cheers, Elvis.
Slide in. Harry.
Don't make it awkward.
Trying not to spill the empty glasses behind me.
We won't make mention. It's just the water, Andrew. That we like to stay hydrated here at BBC F1. Andrew. You've just joined us, having walked down from the paddock, a brisk walk. What is
It
it,
was
35 minutes, is it?
Actually, I beat Apple Maps by 15 minutes.
Of course
so-
you did.
Oh.
Bent some pace. Right, you've been up and down the paddock since the checkered flag. You were in the commentary box with us, and then you darted off. Come back to our first kind of conversation that we had, the feedback on what we've seen today, and the first proper look at this new era of Formula One.
Well, I think it's fair to say it's mixed. Basically, everyone went into this race in Formula One a bit concerned about what would happen, and with the open minds about whether the rules would need to be tweaked after 3 races. That's still very much the case. The drivers are complaining about danger. Lando Norris referred to that. George Russell called his battle with Charles Leclerc dicey.
We saw that the Colapinto nearly going into the back of Liam Lawson's slow racing bulls off the start line. Could have been catastrophic.
Exactly. Max Verstappen's obviously still not happy with the rules, as you know. It's about artificiality. That was a word that Andrea Stella, the McLaren team principal, used. This boost, this overtake. What was going on with Leclerc and Russell basically was that one of them was using either boost or overtake to get past. That would deplete their battery. Then the other one would be able to challenge them again. And also the effect of that was that it cost them a lot of race time, which allowed Hamilton and Antonelli to close up. Now, as the season goes on, I'm sure the drivers will start to think about that a bit more. Is it the right way should we be doing this? Is it best for our race to not actually race? Sounds a bit counterintuitive, but then counterintuitive is a word that's been used about these rules by Oscar Piastri, for example. So lots of concern still. Having said that, I would say that a lot of the worry was allayed to a degree, in the sense that it still looked like a Grand Prix. There was still some genuine racing. After qualifying, the whole paddock was a bit shell-shocked by the advantage that George Russell had. The race made it clear that wasn't anywhere near as big an advantage as it appeared to be. I've been speaking to the Mercedes engineers. They say a lot of that was Russell managing the energy properly on the lap, all the learnings that they've got through being the works team, him applying that better than Kimi Antonelli did. So that gap flattered his achievement as a driver. So if you want a driver of the day for me, and a driver of the from me, and a driver of the weekend, as good as Arvid Lindblad was, I would give it to Russell just for that. But I think there's very much a sort of watch and wait, and but with an approach of, we probably think we are going to have to make some changes to this. It's just a question of what exactly they're going to be.
But that's fine, isn't it? Making changes to a new rule set is the DNA of F1. They have to tweak as they go. They learn so much so quickly. I know what you're saying, that they shouldn't have to after 3 races or so.
Well, you're right to a degree. The issue with these rules is that there's been various ways of describing them: Curate's egg, Frankenstein's monster,
so positive,
and so on and so forth. Basically what happened is they created an engine and didn't really think about the car that would go with it, and then when they started doing the car, they introduced a load of compromises because of all the political battles that were going on that didn't really need to be there. There's all sorts of things that could have happened. Those things that could have happened can't happen now, so they're kind of trying to sticking plaster them in one way or another. Or maybe they won't. Let's wait and see. But I don't think that's going to happen until after the Japanese Grand Prix, which is the 3rd race of the season, in a couple of weeks' time.
Well, exactly. We've just had the first race of the year under our belts, and the first proper chance to see what we're dealing with here. So let's take it one race at a time, and we haven't got very long until we go racing again, literally a couple of days, as everyone makes the trek over to Shanghai for the Chinese Grand Prix, and it'll be the first sprint race of the year as well. So we really are straight into it, and a double dosage of racing as well. But that's it, I think. Thank you very much to all the team for joining us, and if you've enjoyed our coverage throughout the weekend on BBC Radio 5 Live, make sure you're subscribed to BBC Sounds and on YouTube. We're also available on iPlayer if you're watching us there for our Checkered Flag podcast. We'll see you in China. Bye-bye.